Okay, so this next story is really fascinating. I was going through the stories today, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and um, I saw this, and this has just blew my mind. So everybody knows that there was a big lawsuit, or not a big lawsuit, but a big to do about the Batgirl movie and how they canceled it. And it was in post, and Warner Brothers and Discovery had just had this merger, and it was they said why, and there was a lot of backlash, a lot of backlash. So this comes from Deadline, and this one is interesting because, and I'm going to read something that's a touch long, but you'll understand what it's so scathing. You have to listen to it. Lawmakers want DOJ, so the DOJ is the Department of Justice. So let me fill you in real quick. When there is a merger of proportions of these two things, right? The Department of Justice has to make sure there's not a monopoly. Okay, so they don't want to basically corner the market. So the DOJ will step in and say, yes, this is good, or no, we really can't do that. Okay, so that's the DOJ. Lawmakers want the DOJ to investigate Warner Brothers Discovery merger, claiming it harmed workers and reduced content choices. The site acts the site acts Batgirl in its letter. So this is fascinating. So here we go. Four, four Democratic lawmakers want the Department of Justice to investigate Warner Brothers Discovery, claiming that it merged companies has harmed workers and reduced consumer choices. Now, I did a story about, before I continue, I did a story about 2 or 3 days ago about how HBO had eliminated or is going to eliminate about 186 movies, older movies, but still, So, um, so yeah. Um, so let's continue. 2 seconds. Okay, so let's continue. I'm sorry, guys. So, Senator Elizabeth Warren, um, Republican Joaquin Castro, Republican David Cicierno, and Representative Pamela Japal, I'm sorry if I'm getting her names wrong, wrote in a letter to the Attorney General Merrick Garland and DOJ antitrust chief Jonathan Cantor that the merger, quote, appeared to have enabled, end quote, the company to, quote, adopt potential anti competitive practices that reduce consumer choice and harm workers in affected labor markets, end quote. Warner Media and Discovery were combined last year in a transaction that was not challenged by the DOJ after review. The company has the incentive and ability to eliminate broad swaths of its workforce, leaving workers with fewer choices for employment and advances. Um, Excuse me, guys. Um, where were we? Oh, lawmakers read their letter. They cited, so I want to read the letter, okay? Okay, so they cited the layoffs in the past year, including the shutdown of CNN as well. Um, so I actually want to read the letter from the DOJ. This is the letter. This is the actual letter that these four representatives sent to the Attorney General. Because here's the thing: this is absolutely and totally scathing, scathing, and it's necessary to hear this. So, um, they talk about, we want to follow up on the concerns we raised in our December 2021 letter regarding the proposed Warner Media Discovery transaction. We respectfully urge the Department of Justice to investigate the state of competition in affected labor and consumer markets following consumption of this merger, which appears to have enabled Warner Brothers Discovery, WBD, to adapt potentially anti-competitive practices that reduce consumer choice and harm workers in affected labor markets. We applaud the antitrust enforcement agency's efforts to modernize federal merger guidelines. We also appreciate the Department of Justice commitment to soliciting public input on these efforts. Through listening sessions, the department heard real-world concerns and stories from the public about the importance of meaningful antitrust enforcement to protect historically marginalized communities. As the department continues its laudable work to protect workers and consumers, we urge the department to closely examine consummated mergers that merit a subsequent review in light of post-consummation actions, such as those of WBD. Protecting competition for workers and consumers is the essence of antitrust law. An Assistant Attorney General Cantor recently noted, quote, antitrust laws apply to transactions that harm content creators and workers, end quote. We are concerned that the Warner Media Discovery merger has proven to be such a transaction. It has enabled the combined WBD to take aggressive measures harming workers and creatives in the media and entertainment industry, while eliminating the disciplinary forces of competition that provide workers with the freedom to change jobs and negotiate for better pay and working conditions. These are senators and representatives saying this. Following the merger, WBD announced numerous labor force reductions and product cancellations that would eliminate consumer and worker choice, canceling several titles, including Batgirl, which was deep in post-production, Gordita Chronicles, and The Time Traveler's Wife. However, these are not the only labor force reductions WBD leadership has made. Shortly after the merger was finalized, WBD realizing a number of cost synergies that were used to justify the merger in the first place, including cuts to hundreds of jobs for working people. First, WBD cut the streaming platform CNN Plus. Now, CNN Plus was they were trying to combine everything on one site and everything else, so they just got rid of it. The CNN Plus cut affected about 350 employees, and 4 months later, CNN laid off another 400 employees. As a part of a broader restructuring, WBD also cut federal funding for CNN programming, reducing competition for new and hurting the broad ecosystem of journalism. They're basically talking about that this merger is hurting how media and entertainment and journalism in general. Further cuts to CNN's planned original television series and entertainment business at the expense of the news and journalism. WBD also enacted 100 layoffs in its company ad sales department and another cost-cutting effort related to the merger. In total, the aforementioned cuts affected thousands of people. Notably, WBD has still $3.5 billion in planned cuts, which does not bode well for workers. I know this is long, guys, but this is necessary to hear. Just bear with me, please, because it gets even more scathing. WBD's aggressive measures post-merger indicate that its current competition in the media and entertainment industry is inadequate. The company has the incentive and ability to eliminate broad swaths of its workforce, leaving workers with fewer choices for employment and advancement. The department should investigate the competition consequences of this merger. The antitrust laws seek to promote consumer choice, product variety, and industry innovation. Accordingly, if the consummated merger results in a dramatic less available content and discourages innovation, the merger should be reassessed. So basically what they're saying is, if this isn't, good for the workers as well as the company, what they're saying essentially is this was only good for the company. This was not good for the workers. WBD's new ownership is hollowing out an iconic American studio, David Zaslav. After the merger was consummated, WBD canceled many projects in various stages of development and was removed content from its platforms. For example, WB took 68 titles off of HBO Max. Some content removed from HBO Max is not available for streaming, renting, or buying on any other platforms, meaning consumers no longer have access to the content they expected to pay when paying for HBO Max. So essentially, a couple of the movies I was talking about the other day that were being removed from the channel, from the streaming service, were as recent as 2018, like Ready Player One, Creed 2, Creed, several other films, and those were only a few years old. And this is why I always stress physical media is so vitally important, because if you don't have access to this and you don't have it on a Blu-ray or a DVD, what are you paying for, really? And that's what they're talking about here. Moreover, audiences will never see projects like Batgirl, a $90 million film that was canceled while, quote, deep in post-production, end quote. Despite consumer outcry reportedly to allow WB to claim it as a tax break, one creator sold his show Whistleblower to HBO Max in February of 2021 after a, quote, competitive bidding process with multiple outlets, end quote. Shortly after the merger was consummated, WB canceled the development of the show. These three examples are merely a prelude of what could come as WB plans further cuts. The damage to content creators whose projects are canceled and deep in development and post-production cannot be overstated. Such cancellations stain these products, making them less appealing and marketable to other buyers. Consumers will likely never be able to watch shows purchased then canceled by WB. WB's conduct amounts to a de facto, quote, catch and kill, end quote, practice, vastly limiting consumer choice. In addition to reducing content available to consumers, WB is also combining HBO Max and Discovery into one streaming platform. Currently, the plan has the combined streaming service as to keep an ad-supported program plan at $10 and an ad-free plan at $15 to $16 per month. However, WBD is offering a premium plan for consumers that will cost $20 a month for, quote, viewers who want to view HBO's signature shows in as high quality as possible, end quote. This leaves so that's like a 4K, okay? Or I don't even know if they would have it, but 8K, but more likely 4K. This leaves questions unanswered about whether a lower price platform will reduce quality from the current product, while consumers are paying the same price and the lack of transparency needed to fully evaluate the plans and their relative prices. With fewer alternatives available to consumers, there is less competitive pressure on WB to innovate or provide a variety of quality products. We respectfully request that the department take another look at the transaction, considering WB's post-transaction conduct. We also hope that competitive consequences resulting from the Warner Media Discovery merger inform updates to the merger guidelines to ensure that the guidelines reflect the needs of the workers, consumers, and content creators in the media and entertainment industry. Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate the work you do to safeguard the American markets and protect our workers and consumers. Now, guys, I know that was long. Okay. So, and thank you for bearing with me, because I think it was so incredibly important that needed to get read. Because a lot of times, you'll see a link in an article like this, and you'll go, "Oh, okay, just do that." But you have to really read exactly what they're doing. And look, they're right. They're absolutely spot on this. And the fact that WBD, okay, Warner Brothers Discovery is doing this is tragic, and is just what they're doing and what the letter said was it was A, harming journalism as we know it, B, taking off content, okay, where if you can't get it anywhere else, what are you paying for? And C, only out for themselves, okay? In the simple respect that it's harming not only the consumer, but the workers. And that's where the thing has to come in. I am not shocked about this. I was shocked at the number of titles they took off of this. But boy, oh boy, they're in deep trouble. They are in deep, deep trouble. And it's going to be fascinating to see what David Zaslav's next move is going to be. Because you know he has to have some sort of rebuttal. You know it. Okay? You know it. And I'm really wondering, could the SEC and DOJ get together and do something about this? That would be fascinating. Because HBO Max, really, I mean, that's next to Netflix. HBO Max is like the premium streaming outlet right now. I mean, think about it. You know, they have House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, The Last of Us, Succession. They've got a ton of stuff. Boy, they're in a mess. They are an absolute mess right now. Now you say, well, why is that important for me? Because my guess is everybody who's watching this stream has one or more streaming services. And my guess is that you have HBO Max and you're paying for HBO Max. And if that's the case, you know, what do you guys think about this? Thank you for bearing with me, like I said about this, but what do you guys think about this? Do you think that Warner Brothers Discovery is in peril of actually getting broken up? Do you think the Department of Justice is actually going to do something? Or do you think they're going to say you need to change your ways and we'll be putting a microscope on you? And here's what Alex says. 100% I have HBO Max and 6 other streamers. Yeah, Alex. So, I mean, look, The Last of Us was one of the highest rated streaming shows on that platform. And, you know, as in second to House of the Dragon. So I'm really fascinated to see what their response is going to be. And I'll be curious to see if David Zaslav doesn't say something himself. Because that's what everybody's looking for. And my last question to you guys is, do you think they could make WB actually turn around and do you think we're going to get some release of the Batgirl in some form? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and I'll get back to everybody.